Welcome to the Women in Tech podcast, where we spotlight innovators, leaders, and change makers that shape the future of technology in the Netherlands. Each episode brings you inspiring conversations with women who are breaking barriers, driving innovation, and creating meaningful impact across industries. We are your hosts, Gaby, Jong, and Mariska, Kleiss, and we are delighted to be able to bring you this podcast through our partnership with the media company No Cowboys. We're sitting in the H20 studio, professional studio. Very proud to be here in Purmerend, part of the esports campus. We also want to give a big shout out to Matthijs Vink, because he's the CEO of H20 and he actually set up this synergy with us and has been supporting us to be able to help women take a better position in tech. We're very happy to be doing that today with you. Today, we are going to introduce Lieke, who is our Director of Women in Tech, and we have a very inspiring founder and CEO with an amazing and inspiring story as well, Faviola. Over to you, Mariska.
Thank you, Gaby. So first of all, I have a question for you, Lieke, because I'm not aware if everybody already knows Women in Tech Netherlands. Can you please tell us a little bit more about who we are, where we stand for, and what our mission is?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Mariska. Yeah, Women in Tech the Netherlands is part of the Global Women in Tech organization. It's an organization with the headquarters in France. It's got 50 chapters worldwide. And here in the Netherlands, we have our own chapter. And we aim to, with all the other chapters, inspire and encourage women in tech. 5 million by 2030, that's the goal. And we do that in all kinds of ways with educational programs, empowerment programs, being present at all kinds of events, etc. And we have a wonderful team in the Netherlands of 30 ladies working real hard. We even have one guy in the team working real hard to get everything done.
Okay, and can you please explain a little bit more, why is it still so important today? Why are we still talking about women and girls in tech and in STEM? How do you call that?
Yeah, STEM and STEAM. There's the A of art in it. So some people say it should be STEAM and some people say it should be STEM. We normally say STEAM because I think art is very important as well. But why is it still necessary? Unfortunately, it's still necessary. But I think in a world where technology takes such an important role in mobility, in politics, in finance, in food, in all industries, tech is omnipresent. And since we're, as women, are like half the population, it's important that we are well presented there and that we have knowledge of what's happening to us, what we can choose from. And unfortunately, that's still not the case. There's still a lot of prejudice. There's still a lot of ideas about what tech is or is not. And we know from all kinds of programs that it's very important for young girls, especially already at a young age, to see other women in the field of tech as a role model, to encourage them to also choose that path. So there's a lot of reasons why it's still very important to be seen, to have role models. The fabulous Faviola who's here today, thank you so much. It's so important that they see that they can be there, because if they can't see it, they can't be it. That's what they always say. And I believe that's very much true. And it's also important to show the men and the whole world in that sense, also the educational system, to look with a sharper glance at the way that they educate girls and guys. If you look at, for instance, the books for STEM subjects, very often the real tech subjects, there's a boy on the cover of the book. All the examples given are male examples in that sense. So that's something to be aware of in even the little things.
Thank you, Lieke. And I have another question, because sometimes people think that since we are women in tech and we're always talking about the difference between women and men, but we are not against them, isn't it? We always invite them to join us and
Absolutely true. We're definitely not against men. We like men. We love men. They do a lot of great things. We're not competing with men. We just want to join them in the world of tech and know what's going on and have our say, and hope that they can see us a little bit more for what we are, what we truly are in tech. So that's the aim. And no, certainly no competition with guys in that sense, or no hard feelings or whatever. Work together.
Cool.
And we have a lot of allies, actually.
Yeah,
and like I said, we even have one guy in our team.
Yeah.
But at a lot of events, we see also a lot of guys empowering us. Maybe even sometimes too much. We've seen with some events that they say, "Oh, we want to be so helpful in that sense, that we made a separate square for women. We have the main stage, and then there's a separate square for women in AI, women in tech, women in cybersecurity. That's not what we want. We want to be on the main stage. We want to share the space with men and not be separated.
Yeah, and luckily for us, Matthijs really understood that that's what we want to do, and that's why we're really happy with the partnership.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
very
exactly.
grateful.
Exactly.
Ja. Deze aflevering wordt mede mogelijk gemaakt door Studio H20 en No Cowboys Productions. En we moeten echt even zeggen, hun studio is fantastisch. De ruimte is super flexibel en je kan je helemaal inrichten en branden in de stijl van je eigen merk. Wat het echt uniek maakt, is dat ze live geschakeld met meerdere camera's opnemen. De montage gebeurt dus al live tijdens ons gesprek, waardoor er achteraf geen editing meer nodig is. Professioneel, snel en van de allerhoogste kwaliteit. Wil jij dit nou ook inzetten voor jouw bedrijf of organisatie? Wij raden het aan. Kijk voor meer informatie op studioh20.nl.
So, I think you have a lot of questions also for Faviola, isn't it?
I do.
Oh, nice.
Thank you, Lieke. Very interesting to hear what we want to do.
Absolutely.
Faviola, welcome. We're really happy that you could join us here today. You only heard yesterday, which kind of speaks to how flexible you are and the kind of person you are, that you show up here today. I'm really interested, and I'm sure our listeners are also very interested in getting to know you. So who are you and what work are you doing today? Can you tell us more about it?
Firstly, thank you so much for having me. As you said, it was very last minute. Matthijs just sent me a quick app and said, I need a woman in tech, and you're the woman in tech that I'm looking for. So I'm not always very flexible. As a woman in tech and entrepreneur, it's very difficult to find time, but it's also very important to make connections and keep your stakeholders and the people that work with you in a wonderful way, keep them close. So of course, I was more than happy to join you guys. And I think that the point of this podcast is also extremely important. So shall I start with introducing
Yes,
who I am?
please.
A little bit of a long story, but we'll take it easy. So I'm Faviola Dadis, and I am the CEO and founder of BrainBoostXR. I have a very unconventional journey that I took into the world of technology. If you look at someone in tech, generally you think of a little bit more of a nerdy person. And I am a nerd, let me tell you. I'm a big nerd, but I like to say I'm a cool nerd. So I think that is something that has always stuck with me. But I had a very successful career that spanned over 15 years long as a high fashion model. So I traveled the world living out of a suitcase, going to fashion weeks in Milan, Paris, Tokyo, London, New York. And while you might not think that that's connected, I'm going to tell you about the different trajectories of my career that have taken me actually into technology and how I utilize these to my strength instead of to my detriment.
Yeah.
So after modeling, I also had quite an extensive career in marketing and public relations, and that was in Asia. I've lived in 9 different countries. So I will bring you 9 different perspectives about how we can look at technology from different cultural points of view. Some people have very high access, but resources are low. Some people don't have access to healthcare. And I've gotten the opportunity to see a lot of this firsthand. Another part of my life was geopolitical lobbying, which was very interesting and also added to my understanding of how to work with different stakeholders and negotiate. And from all of these experiences, what I drew the most is we tell stories. That's how we connect with people. Technology shouldn't just be a piece of tech for the sake of tech. It should be that tech doesn't work for, the people. We're working with tech. We're the individuals that are driving it. So from my modeling career, what I was drawing upon in all of the countries I was living in was essentially, how do we market a brand in a different place? How does a different culture perceive these types of brands? What's important for the culture? And this, I think, really lended strengths to me. I think in the beginning, I was a little bit timid to say, hey, I'm a neuroscientist now. I'm an entrepreneur, but I was also a model for a very long time. I've embraced that completely. On Instagram, my handle is Neuroscience Barbie. So I've I've definitely leaned into it by now.
What made you embrace it, and why were you hesitant to tell people that was your background at first?
I think in the beginning, a lot of women in tech, regardless of their background, I think are scared to be taken seriously, are scared that they won't have a seat at the table as we're trying to make sure that is happening as much as possible so we can get the balanced opinions that we need.
Yep.
And yeah, from there, I just, I thought we're going to have to start again.
So my question was, why did you end up embracing it, and why didn't you embrace it in the first place?
There we go. I'm so sorry. You have to edit that.
That's what they're here for.
So the reason why I didn't embrace it in the first place was because, as I was thinking, many women in tech are actually, regardless of their background, a little bit timid to have a seat at the table. And in the end, why I did end up embracing it is that I realized I can carve out my own seat at the table. I don't have to be the same as everyone else. I have an unconventional journey. And while that might seem strange to some people, I connect it to everything that I do. Especially think about the amount of times that we're looking at a product and we're thinking about how is this going to fit into our lives. For me, it started to make a lot more sense to portray these things from a diverse perspective. So not just from the perspective of men who are, these individuals who have been powerhouses. And, I wouldn't say that it's predominantly a male-driven industry, but I would actually.
Yeah,
It's the fact.
I love the fact that at this period of time, it's allowed to, like you as an example, have beauty and brains, as they say, and it's not only a male industry anymore, because tech used to be very male-driven, but it's for, like I said in the beginning, it's for the complete society. We're all customers. We're all going to use tech.
Absolutely.
So we all have to be at that table. So thank you for taking that courage.
Absolutely, thank you. And then a little bit more about myself. I'm a neuroscientist and an entrepreneur. I am a 2-time founder, and I'm also a patient. So this is something that I think lends very well into the work that I do, not just as a researcher, clinician, and as an entrepreneur, but to understand things on both sides of the table. So what we really are looking at in the industry that I'm in neurotechnology, is how do we gain value for everybody? But everyone defines value differently. A patient doesn't live 99% of their life at the hospital. So they need technology that works for them, not people working for the technology itself.
Yep.
So I think that that's something that really drove me into this space, was lived experiences. I work specifically with acquired brain injuries, which is an umbrella term that consists of stroke or traumatic brain injuries from accidents or other different events, concussion, brain tumors, a whole host of different neurological problems. And I personally have a chronic rare neurological disease. So I see both sides of the table. And as I mentioned, being a 2-time founder, NeuroReality was my first company, and we focused on cognitive rehabilitation of deficits that individuals had after sustaining a brain injury, for example, attention and memory and planning, things like this. But then it became personal when I was diagnosed with my own, let's say coincidental, but maybe it was meant to happen in that way, with my own disease. And
so for our listeners, you were already working in the field and you were already building tech, and then you were diagnosed yourself.
Yes, indeed. And so it was in the beginning stages of my field in my bachelor's, I was already working on taking traditional neurological and neuropsychological tests, which are often done in pencil and paper, and translating them into digitalized versions. Then I actually worked with KNVB, our Dutch national football team, on their concussion protocols for sideline testing. If individuals have a lot of headers, then we have to worry about them. They have to step out for a moment, make sure that they're safe to return to play. And then I've always sort of had this unique view about how do we take problems and solve them on a global scale. And we have a huge problem with individuals that have suffered from acquired brain injuries. And yeah, then after studying at Oxford as well, that was a personal experience for me too. I did my master's degree in Oxford in cognitive neuroscience and clinical neuropsychology. I saw so many patients that I worked with experiencing these cognitive problems too. But what I realized after neuroreality was acquired a couple of years ago by a large telehealth provider in the United States was that the biggest thing that I noted is that we need to improve quality of life for patients, not just cognition, but that patients really need solutions that give them dignity and independence and allow them to feel like themselves again after such a traumatic event in their life.
Would you say that's a different approach than was traditionally taken to patient care in that area?
Absolutely. So generally speaking, what I'd like to move away from is a snapshot in the doctor's office, right? I think we've all experienced it, that you're having an issue and then you go to the doctor, all of a sudden it's not present. And you're like, but I promise you, this is what is going on. So continuity of care started to become extremely important for me. When I founded BrainBoostXR, that was something that I really wanted to make sure we're creating this very personalized type of medicine, let's say, even though it's digital. We're prescribing digital medication nowadays, which I think is fantastic.
Wow.
But in that sense, it was different from neuroreality, and I'm sure I'll tell you more about BrainBoostXR as we move on in the podcast. But my goal also was to tackle the human side of this tech. So not just we're putting individuals into what the status quo would have been. Instead of doing pencil and paper paradigms, now we're going to make it a gamified program utilizing extended reality. But it's not just about fun and games. It's about making sure that the individual can return to their life again and lead a productive life in society and connect with individuals again.
Is there also a difference between men and women? Because there's also this topic that when you go to the doctor, it's always, it's always based on general for everyone. So
actually, you're correct. A lot of the tests that we have what you call normative data on, that's basically, we assume that we've done enough testing to represent the entire population. And a lot of that normative data comes from data sets that are with 50-year-old white men. A lot of these older data sets. Now they're starting to come from college students, a lot of them healthy college students or so on. But there are differences innately between men and women, far less than you would think when it comes to our brain, actually. So I think that it's important, as you guys were saying, to include men in the conversation. It's not just that I treat women, but I definitely like to bolster women in this type of environment and setting because we're often overlooked. And I don't think that we should be. Not anymore.
No. Yeah, and I just saw research earlier this year on what happens to female brains when they have their second baby, which was huge.
Yes.
Yes, so I can imagine it is different for men and women, and we should spend time on that. Yeah.
Exactly. Even though our structures and our functions of our brain are similar, there are experiences that shape what happened to us as women. And that's what changes your brain. That's what makes us all unique. Someone could, for example, a female could have a stroke and a male could have a stroke, the exact same place, the same etiology, have completely different outcomes. So I think that it is important to look at gender differences, but more in the sense of, again, how do we all come to the table together instead of having separate places? Of course, I'm a huge advocate of women in STEM. I sat on the Forbes Technology Council as the European representative for women in STEM. And I can tell you that the hundreds of people that I spoke to, generally that I advised in the audience, were men. There were not very many females that I was advising. So I think that it's also a little bit of let's educate.
Yep.
And let's make sure that men understand, something I think that's funny and I experience very frequently is my co-founder. He's a man. And when we walk into somewhere together, generally speaking, they'll want to go and shake his hand first, thinking he's the CEO. And that's just quite typical, I think. Gender bias is something that we can't get away from, but we can do our best, absolutely, to be recognized and let the men challenge us for what we're doing. We're ready for the challenge.
Cool, thank you. For our listeners who are not familiar with what you do, can you tell us a little bit more about BrainBoostXR?
Certainly. So BrainBoostXR, as I said, was born from my own lived experiences as a patient, and also things that I saw happening around me. So first and foremost, I had seen my grandmother, my Oma. She had a severe stroke and she was not able to access the type of care that she needed. Her physical detriments, so physical therapy, was quite well taken care of. But unfortunately, she was left with a lot of problems with her memory, with her attention, and so on. I experienced the same thing with my patients working at Oxford. And in the end, what I started asking was, what are you doing instead? If you're not being given the correct care that you need, what are you doing? A lot of them were gaming, which I found very interesting, hearing, this from individuals that were either going through neurodegenerative diseases like dementia, or had sustained a stroke or a very serious traumatic brain injury. They were playing games.
What kind of games?
So lots of little puzzle games, things on their phone that were easy, things on their tablet. And that sort of struck me alongside with the fact that when I lay in the hospital bed, I like to play games as well. It's not, it's not a fun place to be. And if we can turn something that's difficult into something that's a little bit more fun, I think that's great. So at BrainBoostXR, we are an innovative medtech company based in Amsterdam. And what we do is we create extended reality immersive experiences for individuals who have sustained an acquired brain injury, as I was mentioning. And how we do this is utilizing gameplay. We track biomarkers, digital biomarkers, from how the patients are responding to the game environment. And eventually, this leads to highly personalized care. With these biomarkers, we map them onto digital twins, which is essentially a replica of your current state. And that allows us not only to personalize the game, so to utilize dynamic difficulty progression, which means making the game not too easy, not too hard, making sure that they're all sitting in the right place and being challenged, but also capable of feeling empowered. And then once we have all of these beautiful biomarkers that we've collected, we can actually start to understand profiles of our patient. So how do we personalize their treatment? How do we make sure that we're actually giving them what they need instead of a one-size-fits-all type of approach? And currently, for example, we're working on an attention model on how to help individuals think about when you lose your keys at home. And you're trying to, everyone has lost their keys,
recognizable,
right? Or in your bag, or in your pockets. Attention is one of the biggest things that we utilize in our life in order to make different cognitive decisions. So we are actually now able to identify different attentional profiles. For example, someone who's fatigued, or someone who might have attentional lapses, meaning space out a little bit. We can then adjust the game and tailor their treatment according to these different metrics that we understand.
And for our listeners, because I have a couple of questions, I can imagine they do too. Can you give a couple of examples of a biomarker, and what does a game look like? What do they experience? What are they actually doing in that game?
Certainly. So a lot of people think that biomarkers have to be these things such as your type of blood or the actual scan that you had on your brain. But a biomarker is anything that is continuously measured. And so sleep, even the hours of sleep, can be a biomarker. But we specifically look at things like reaction time. We talk about omissions and commissions, so error rates. We look at I won't get too far into it because of IP, but aside from that, very subtle biomarkers that you wouldn't expect as a researcher, though, I find it very important to take research out of academia and put it into practice. So with regards to everything we do, it is science-based. We look at different biomarkers that are specifically derived from what we call peer-reviewed literature. So from individuals that over decades have done research on these different things. And we say, okay, a stroke survivor could have a score on the game between X and Y. A TBI survivor might have a different score, and then in different profiles as well. So when they go to play the game, it can adapt with them. But then, of course, in the end, we have this continual feedback loop because you're not just a static human being. You're playing the game continually. So the updates that we have, imagine you're sitting in a VR environment, right? And you have to actually take a lot of things into your design principles and technology for this population as well. You have to make sure that you understand these people can get overstimulated very easily. They might even be prone to having seizures. So you have to be very careful and make sure that your design principles are taking these things into account. For the example that I was giving about searching for your keys, in one of our game environments, that is indeed what you do. You have a fun way of generally what you would have been doing in your clinical office, or your clinician's office, would be having a pen and paper and going through some very tedious cognitive exercises for attention. For example, the D2 test is a very well-known test for attention. And guess what it entails? Crossing out D's for a very long time on a piece of paper. And then you're specifically looking for D's with a certain feature and ignoring the distractors.
Yeah.
So that's what we do in the game as well. But we make it what we call ecologically valid, meaning it has a reason to exist in the real world. And that's how we take gamification. We give individuals rewards. We make sure that then they feel compelled, because only about 35% of individuals will actually complete their rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're playing a game and you know that you're going to interact with it and be able to level up and utilize all of these different aspects from the reward system that we've developed, it makes it, I think, a lot easier for patients to interact. But our games are based around scenarios that would replicate everyday life settings like shopping in a market. But think more shopping in a market in Tatooine from Star Wars, like, not necessarily our normal market.
Yeah.
We still need to make it fun. It's,
Right.
it's a journey for everyone. And the cool thing is, with AI, you also have AI storytelling and gamification now.
Yeah.
So the game arc is different for everyone that experiences it. Another part of what we do, and it's not just frivolously, we have an AI companion, because I think that that's something that, oh, wow, no, not another AI chatbot. No, we have a very interesting AI companion that also is capable of collecting behavioral biomarkers based upon your vocal tone, your cadence, what you're saying, and then it will give you a score about your emotional status. This is very valuable for clinicians because, as I was saying, we don't want a snapshot in the clinical office. We want continuity of care.
Yeah.
So in between sessions, that lovely AI companion is there to support you. You get to have conversations with them, and we also give rewards based upon having specific conversations that can lead the clinician to understand better about what their state of care is. Are they improving? Are there certain things that they need more help with? Because a lot of people also, they're sitting there and doing their work and forgetting to tell their clinician, actually, last week I was having a problem with this and this.
Yep.
Patients don't necessarily want to sit in a clinical office. They want the outcomes and the value from what they're doing.
Yep.
And in my opinion, the value for someone who's suffered something like this is not, oh, I get to use cool technology, but I get to remember my grandchild's name later on. We have to humanize these types of experiences.
I'm very, very impressed by what you're building, but also very curious to know how the adoption is by clinicians. So I can imagine if you're talking about VR, AI, they might not all be super excited about it.
So in the beginning, I think that there was a lot of proof to do, and I did that with neuroreality. I always was saying, I'm making this a neuro reality. This is my new reality. This is what I believe other people should, be paying attention to. It was difficult. Neuroreality was founded in 2017, and I had already begun working on AI and studying and learning about AI from 2014 onwards. So it wasn't necessarily that it was a hype for me when it came about. It was something that I was already very much immersed in as a neuroscientist. And I think that at first, clinicians were very skeptical about utilizing these types of technology for rehabilitation because people can be dogmatic in the medical industry and field. They can think we've done this for a long time in this specific way. Why should we do it differently?
Yeah.
And what we could show them through piloting and through doing a lot of different controlled testing with patients is that there is actually something working. So as I was saying, everyone defines value differently. A patient is going to define their value differently than what a clinician is going to. But we never want to replace clinicians. That's not our point. Our point is to give them tools and help them assist patients to have these better overall healthcare outcomes when they're not sitting in the clinic with someone helping them.
Yeah.
I think that XR itself, so AR is very well utilized in surgeries. XR is being quite well utilized in rehabilitation, but cognitive problems, that's a little bit more new to the table. Although now, after years, because we're almost 10 years down the line from neuroreality and in founding BrainBoostXR, I don't notice that it's the same friction anymore. A lot of different people have proven in terms of relaxation and pain management, in terms of treating PTSD, that virtual reality has a seat, for being a technology that is very useful in helping individuals experience not only a more human way to engage with technology, because it is more human. If you try VR for the first time, I love watching people try it for the first time. Most of my patients are not as familiar with tech, right?
Yeah.
And they are a little bit older. So if I'm talking with someone that's 60 years old and doesn't necessarily have that much, 60 is young now, by the way, but doesn't have that much technological experience, they put on the VR headset, they really get it quickly. It's very intuitive. And clinicians really appreciate that they don't have to take so much time to explain, this is how the games on the tablet work. These are all the things that you're going to push these buttons and this and that. It's actually pretty easy. You have the VR set. In our game, you can choose to use the controller or just gaze, literally just gaze in an object, and it will select the object for you.
That's nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's
really
nice.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things that we had to do first to prove why this actually is beneficial. And now I don't think that there's that much that I have to prove anymore, which is wonderful. I think that was really nice that someone said to me, and that's where the quote, you've earned your place at the table, came from, was I was humbled to have been invited to do another speaking engagement. And I said, I really appreciate that. And the gentleman had said back to me, well, you've been in this industry for a very long time. You've certainly earned your place here. So
wow, that's a huge compliment.
it was for me a huge, huge
Yeah,
compliment,
really.
coming from someone who has encountered and met so many different founders and entrepreneurs and people working in our space in medical technology and especially digital medical technology. To hear that, it was for me a big compliment. It showed that, hey, I'm actually doing what I want to do, and I'm doing a good job. So that's something to be proud of. I can be very hard on myself. I think that a lot of women are hard on themselves when it comes to being in an industry that we're not always, I wouldn't say that we're not welcome, but that we're a little bit more marginalized.
We have to show
right?
we have to show our results and then be respected instead of
Exactly.
being trusted to be respected. And in that spirit, you have a lot of experience not in the tech world, and you came into the tech world. I'm really curious for all of the students and all of the professionals, founders, women listening. What would be the advice you would give them?
Don't wait to start. Everyone thinks that there's someone out there that's more well prepared than they are. And the reality is that your unique experiences are actually what give you your strengths. So as I was telling you, my modeling career might not, you would think, okay, well, how does that connect to technology? Well, actually, I'm sitting there and I'm learning about branding, and I'm learning about how do we market this in China as compared to the United States, as compared to the Netherlands. So think about your background as a strength. Not everyone comes from a conventional, I'm going to go to university and study engineering, and then later on I'm going to go into technology and this very specific field. A lot of the time things come about best because it's from learned experiences and personal experiences. I think that's a way to really make sure that women understand that they can carve out their own space, because while it could still be looked at as a predominantly male industry, as we know and we've discussed, I think that the value that we bring as females with our different perspectives is huge. And I give just something that's completely outside of our realm of what we're talking about, but I remember hearing a conversation on how hard hats, helmets for individuals that are doing construction are designed.
Yeah.
They're designed for men.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so true.
And actually, women use children's hard hats. So there's a big issue there that needs to change.
Yep.
If there's women that are presenting their ideas and taking charge and saying, you know what, I've thought about this in a different way, then essentially we're going to have better outcomes for everybody in many different industries, not just in medtech where
that's true, because I know that even for the police, the vests that they wearing,
they don't fit correctly.
all designed for men. Yeah.
Seatbelts in cars.
Seatbelts in cars, indeed.
Yeah.
And this is now starting to change. It's only now starting to change. And as I said, I think that these are things that researchers look at in academia. But if we don't, as entrepreneurs, take the time to put those things out there and have them adopted, what's the point of keeping this on these wonderful papers that we publish?
Because an entrepreneurial question, if I may, because you started a company, did you get funding? And did you try to get the funding, or did you let the guys in the team?
Oh, God, no. I love mentorship, actually. So I very frequently mentor and let my mentees mentor me as well. I think that's important, this cross discussion. But fundraising is something that a founder is always doing. Even when you're not looking for money, you're always fundraising. And so for Neuroreality, we had several grants, and we also had venture capital funding for that. That was a whole different thing. I won't get into the investor relationships, except just to tell you that women, when you go out there, know that it's long-term marriage with an investor. And if you have some relationship problems, you better find what those are early on so that you can solve them, or leave the relationship. And I learned a lot from my funding and the way that investors worked with me as a female as well. I would hear really horrible things said to me, quite abusive actually, that I know would never have been said to a man. Or, I'm in my 40s now, but I look quite young. So there's also a lot of ageism that comes along with it too, right? With BrainBoostXR, so we call them bootstrapped beginnings. I decided that I was going to, and my co-founder, we were going to put in our own capital, and we were going to create the product that we wanted, that we found valuable, that we worked with patients to create, that we worked with clinicians to create, that we work with researchers to create, and then take it to a venture capital firm. Because at that
already
point,
have something to prove.
Exactly. We don't need to prove to them. Actually, it's funny. Individuals often think, founders think, oh, we need an investor. We need money. We need money. Yes, of course we do. But investors need us too, because they can't create any kind of value for themselves and get back their 8 to 10 multiples that they'd like to have from their investment if they don't have great solutions. And you see more and more VC firms that are actually focused on female founders.
Yep.
I think that says something, that says that we're underrepresented.
Yep.
It's a shame that we are, but I think that these incentives that people are driving towards making sure that we have those opportunities, whether it be via funding or just being us, being uniquely and unapologetically a female in our industry.
And to that extent, what are some of the changes in the industry that you really want to see for women?
I would like to see more women being educated and literate about technology, understanding how AI works, not just trusting it blindly as a tool that is a fun thing. Let's use ChatGPT or Claude, and then blindly trust everything that it says. I think that goes for everybody, actually. But for women, I think that it's very important that we gain more visibility. I think that's something that I really hope for women in tech more. That's why we're all sitting here together, right?
Yeah.
Us four females talking about things that are extremely important in the world. So I hope for young women, I like to do a lot of volunteer work and mentoring with girls in tech because it starts at a young age, right? If they see other individuals like myself and like yourselves working in the industry, then it makes it a lot less scary to take those steps yourself. So I hope that girls and women in tech can start to see themselves as extremely valuable individuals with different perspectives that are going to make huge changes in the world, just like their counterparts.
Just like you.
Yeah. I hope that I am.
Yeah, you're definitely a role model. Thank you so much for your story. We've really enjoyed listening to you.
It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
So, Lieke, last question for you. As the director of Women in Tech Netherlands, what are your hopes for the next generation?
Well, like we discussed here, I hope that they look at the role models and understand that this world is also for them and that it's not a scary world, but they just have to dive into it and help each other. As women, we should really, really should help each other and listen to each other's stories, take each other's advice. And I hope for them to thrive so that it's not only smart technology, but also wise technology, because it's in every part of our society. And I think it's very important. And I hope that they all join Women in Tech. We celebrate our 7th birthday this month. You've all been there from the beginning, 7 years. We've got 10,000 followers on the LinkedIn plus. It's a great community and we can learn from each other. So I hope that they'll join and that they'll stick to each other.
I think the community part is one of the most important things you just mentioned, because I think it previously was that women are quite competitive with each other because we want to get our place at the table, right?
Yeah.
And now I don't think that's the case anymore. I think that females are working together.
It was very exclusive. I remember being in a room with only men, and then one other female comes in, and immediately there's a comparison.
Yeah, why
there
are we doing that? Why are we doing that? I don't understand. I totally don't understand.
It just happens. But I always love it when there are at least 4 or 5 women, because then the comparison is not so one-on-one.
Yeah.
And you become a group, and you don't have to fear each other, or you're not competitors anymore.
It's also a mindset breaking away from the patriarchal idea that once there is another woman, she's a threat to you. So it's breaking away from that mindset, actually.
Absolutely.
Empowered women empower women.
Yeah, I agree. And then we're talking about ecosystems. We're sitting in an ecosystem right now that maybe people think of as an esports stadium or primarily with gaming, but Matthijs has created this whole ecosystem where women are welcome.
Yep.
We definitely have a place here. And we have an amazing opportunity where there are innovators, entrepreneurs, people that are within gaming, but also completely outside of gaming. And as I walk around the campus, it's nice to see other females here. And I saw girly girls, actually, to be honest.
Really
you know,
girly.
I know it sounds silly, but I saw girls dressed beautifully, and you know,
so true.
So it's really nice. I think that's a lot of the way that I think about building BrainBoostXR in general, is through an ecosystem, and that's a thread that ties from our entire conversation back to where our sponsors are and where we're actually sitting right now.
So nice. And Lieke, if you say for women in tech Netherlands, can you say it in one sentence? That's really from the marketing perspective. Can you explain the company in one sentence?
The company in one sentence. We aim to reach out to girls and women to encourage them and to make them enthusiastic about tech, but also to create the absolute horrible word awareness amongst men, amongst companies and organizations, also politics, to see that the half of the population is women, and we want just to be there at the table with them.
Cool, thank you. So, Lieke, thank you for sharing your perspective and for the work you're doing to build a more inclusive technology ecosystem. And thank you to our listeners for joining us to another episode of the Women in Tech podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe, share the episode with your network, and join us again as we continue highlighting the women shaping the future through technology.